We're going to continue now in Daniel. We are in the vision of Daniel, Perek Zion, holding Pasuk Zion. We already saw the first vision of the three creatures that he saw. The first one was a lion. The second one was a bear. The third one was a leopard/tiger, something like that. And the Pasuk now, and we said, right, those were the three big superpowers of Bavel, and then Madai Uparas, and then Yovel. Now we move on to the fourth animal. So the Pasuk says, Basar Deno, that's what we're doing right now. We're going to do it right now. Basar Deno, after this, Chazir Haves Bechezve Lelia, I saw in the night, Varu Chever Rivio, and the fourth animal comes up. So he says, he saw in the night, so Mefarshim say this was a second night, because the fourth creature was so much more powerful and scary that it overrides the first three. So whatever happened in the first three stories doesn't come to the fourth story, and we know in Golus-wise, the first three stories took altogether, if you want to count till the end of the Churban of Bayis Sheni, altogether it's max 500 years. But this last one is taking 2,000 years, so that's why it's so much greater. The Pasuk then says, this animal, it doesn't describe it, it just says it was Dechila, Ve'emsoni, V'sakifa Yatira. It was awesome and scary and very powerful. But it doesn't describe what type of animal it is. So here you can use your imagination and go into science fiction or AI and ask the most scary looking creature, and you can decide that's what Daniel saw. However, there is a medrash, and the medrash said that the Nevi'im did not want to talk about this animal and this country because, for whatever reason, it doesn't say why, but it says two Nevi'im did say what kind of animal this animal refers to. And the two Nevi'im were Asaf and Moshe Rabbeinu. And what is the animal? Asaf is one of the Mizmar LaAsaf you have in Tehillim. So he's one of the Mesharenim, one of the people that wrote Kapitlach of Tehillim with Ruach HaKodesh, with Nevuah. So he's considered a Navi, and he describes many events that will be in the future. So he talks about this, and he says, Yecharsemeno Chazir miyoar. And so to Moshe Rabbeinu says, Vesa Chazir. So according to this, the animal that he saw was a pig. Now pigs, so I mean, we don't play with pigs, but I'm sure many of you have seen the little farm toys with little pigs. So the goyim like to make the pigs little like gentle animals, just like hippopotamuses for some reason became like a gentle animal, even though those that know anything about zoology know that hippopotamuses are very dangerous animals. So for some reason, because they love pigs, because pigs is their food, so they make pig into a nice little cute animal, even and the menchies, whatever. If you, again, most of us try not to have them, but once in a while you buy a toy and it has it. But pigs can be very ugly and disgusting and very powerful as well, especially what's called a boar. A wild boar are for sure dangerous and powerful.
Yeah,
so
a bunch of them in Texas and everywhere.
Right. I heard about that. And they're overrunning the fields and causing destruction. So this was a pig. So this is what the Mefarshim say. It was a huge pig, a huge, scary, awesome, powerful pig. Now, why specifically compared to a pig? So Chazal say that we know that from all the non-kosher animals, only 4 of them have one siman. So the four that have one siman is the camel and the rabbit and the hyrax, whatever that is. Those 3 animals, they chew their cud and they don't have split hooves. But the Chazir has split hooves and doesn't chew its cud. So it's a famous word that's brought down, all the Mefarshim, everyone says the word, at the Chazir. Why is it worse? Because it makes as if he's kosher. The camel is chewing its cud, but it doesn't show if he's kosher. His hooves are closed. But the Chazir shows, look at my hooves, look, I'm split, I'm kosher. But really inside, he's rotten just like any non-kosher animal. So they say that this creature, this country, which we'll soon see, pretty much all the Mefarshim say it's Rome, the Christians. So they say they are always as if they're all holy and proper, but deep down they're so corrupt. And he brings a story of a certain shilton, a certain ruler, that he was known to kill. When he would find thieves, he would kill them. When he would find people that were mizana, in those times if someone did Eishes Ish, today it's unfortunately accepted into society. But in those times, if the government caught someone being with somebody else's wife, they would kill him. And also witchcraft was considered an avera, using sorcery, using the powers of tumah. So this Christian ruler would kill these people. And one day, in the middle of court, when he's killing all these kind of people, he whispers to one of the judges, one of the officers, by the way, I did all 3 of these sins last night. I did Eishes Ish, and I did stole, and I did witchcraft. So he's like a Chazir, meaning I'm kosher, I'm killing, but really inside he was as bad. So that's why they're compared to a Chazir. Now, as I said, this is the Romans and the Christians. However, really there's lots of discussion which country this goes for. And I want to point something out, which might be obvious from whoever's following the shiurim, that we know there's a famous concept that everything is found in Torah. If you want to know anything in the world, Torah has the sort of answers for all the questions. One of the things that you want to learn in Torah, if you're interested, is history. Again, many people, history is a boring subject, but if you learn history right, it's amazing, because history is basically stories. That's what it's all about. In this pasuk and these next few psukim, there is so much history in the Mefarshim. And what they're doing is, they know the history, and they're showing you how the psukim are showing the history. And that's why most of them are going to connect all these things that we're saying now to the history, to the psukim. But there's going to be arguments about which country it is. I'm going to tell you now already. The main machlokes is pretty much all the Mefarshim say it's Rome and the Christians, but the Even Ezra says no. You know what this animal is? It's the Muslims. This animal is the Muslims, the big, gross, disgusting Muslim. That's what it is. So it's my understanding is there's shivim panim l'Torah. There's different ways of interpreting. And when Hashem showed Daniel this vision, showed him the future, He's showing him a mixture of everything of what's going to happen. So this animal that he sees can be interpreted for the Christians and the Romans. It could be interpreted as the Muslims, but it's all there. But they share tons and tons of stories about what happened. So the pasuk continues describing this animal. Like we said, it's so awesome and scary and powerful. So it's because it says that Rome was known to be very cruel. They were also known to be very smart. And they were also known to be very strong. But these three qualities many other countries had as well. Many countries were smart in strategy. Many countries were cruel. And many countries were powerful. But the combination of all three made Rome the superpower. The pasuk continues describing this animal by saying, "V'shinayin difarzel lo, ravravon." It has huge metal fangs, metal teeth. Again, when we look at a chazir, I don't think anyone has an image of a chazir up front. My understanding is a chazir doesn't really have big fangs or teeth. But again, this is all in the vision. So this pig, which is huge and powerful, has these fangs coming out of its mouth. Yeah.
Well, there are certain types of pigs that have tusks that are
the boars.
Boars.
Right. So it could be that's referring to that. But boars are usually smaller. But yeah, could be.
Ones are smaller.
Well, so it could be. Could be these kind of things, but it has these huge the teeth coming out of it. So here the Mefarshim bring the story of the Roman government. So that he says the Roman government had basically 3 or 4 stages. So Bechlal, Rome was a city that was it's a country within Italy, and it has lots and lots of stories of their history. But the way he describes it, that there was a whole bunch of kings, and there's actually a list of the names of the kings going back to Tzfoi ben Eliphaz ben Esav. So we all know of Esav, Esav's son Eliphaz. Eliphaz had a son Amalek. But he had another son, his name was Tzfoi, and this Tzfoi was the one that was the first king of Rome, and there's a list of all the names of all the kings, till the last king, his name was Tarquinius. Now this Tarquinius, an Enochel of Esav, so because he was king, and like kings are often what they want to do, they do whatever they want, so he basically seized one of the women that were there, a married woman, and he violated her. Now she was very, obviously, as any woman would feel, terrible for such a thing. She was already married, and even if she wasn't married, but for sure that she was married. So she was so hurt by what happened, she committed suicide. Which, unfortunately, happens that when women are violated, sometimes they're so embarrassed, so disgusted, and so feel that their life is over that unfortunately it happens that they commit suicide. Now, when she committed suicide, her brothers and her husband, they were so upset, Basically, they blamed the king for what happened. Obviously, it's all his fault. So they rebelled against him, and they killed the king. And at that point, they decided from now on, there's not going to be a ruler of a king in Rome. And this, in my understanding, is the first, what we call democracy or republic. The way it works today in all civilized countries is whoever's in charge is basically elected by the people. And it's usually not one person in charge. As much as the president, especially in America today, is so powerful and does whatever he wants, but there is Congress, there is a Senate, there's a whole bunch of people. He can't just pass whatever law he wants. He needs permission from the House, whatever the different law. And all normal countries have the same system. There are countries like Russia, we have one guy in charge and does whatever he wants, and if you don't like what he wants, then Baruch Dynamics. That's what usually happens. But Let me just finish the piece. So by Rome, this was the point where they felt that this king is so ruthless and does whatever he wants. We can't allow this. So they came up with the concept of a republic. Now today, what republic and republican can mean different things. But the original shayrish of the word republic means we represent the public. We're here for the public. And therefore, it's not going to be one ruler. They had what they call the Senate, which today we call senators. It all began by Rome. They had a group of 300 people elected by the regular citizens, and they were responsible. So now there's a lot more fairness because there isn't one person doing whatever he wants. Everyone has to make sure everyone's represented. So it's not a flawless system. Of course, it's problems, but this was to help. Eventually, it led to problems, as we'll see in a moment. Yeah.
What about ICE nowadays?
What about?
ICE.
Yeah. He has to get agreement from the government.
Yes.
So he got agreement from the government. That's what. Okay,
And then ICE goes, oh.
I'm not here to explain exactly the current American history. That you can check the news and see what's happening.
Oh boy.
What happened was eventually the Senate, like I said, no system is flawless, and people are people, and when you're in charge, you often take advantage of your position, and even though there's a few people together, they can do it. So what ends up happening is that there was a woman, one of the wives of one of the senators, her husband, she was pregnant and she passed away while she was pregnant. And after she passed away, they realized that the baby's still alive in her stomach. So they cut open up her stomach and they took out the baby, and the baby was alive. This baby was Julius Caesar. Today there's something called a C-section. A C-section is a process where when a woman gives birth, instead of giving birth in a natural way, they have to cut open her stomach, and this way the baby can survive. That's called a C-section, which comes from a cesarean section, which is named after this Julius Caesar, because he is the first one in documented history, at least, as far as I know, that went through this process. Now this Julius Caesar, he became Caesar, and what ends up happening is he grows up, and because there was resentment of people against the Senate, so he basically tries overthrowing the Senate, and he becomes somewhat in charge, and he's king for a very short amount of time. But he was very powerful and very smart, apparently, and did tons of good stuff, and eventually, he runs but eventually, like I said, he ends up getting killed as well. Now, after he gets killed, other people took over, and then the next rulers took themselves the names of Caesar as well. And if I'm not mistaken, the month of July is named after Julius Caesar, I think I'm not mistaken. The Caesar after him, his name was Augustus, and August is named after him, which, by the way, Julius Caesar, one of the things that he did was he established a normal calendar. And those times, so I forgot to point out, the Senate had a rule that there was always one person in charge, but only for 1 year. But there were no normal calendars. So since there was no normal calendars, it was like 8 months of the year. And so October, September, November, December, those were the last 4 months. But it means 8, 9, 10. I forgot what means what. I think October means 8. But today October is month number
10.
12. No, December is 12. It's 10. Today it's 10, but it really October means 8, like a octagon, like 8 sides, because there was no system. It was basically in the wintertime, it was too complicated, so once the season starts, they had months. And of course, it wasn't the normal system, and things that were completely out of whack. So Julius Caesar made a Seder, 12 months of the year, it made it normal, and that became the standard for hundreds of years. That became the calendar till another pope, many years later, changed something and made it the Gregorian calendar, but the Russian Orthodox Church still uses the other one, whatever the story is. But he made a huge shiur, and like I said, so since it was a new month now, was named after him, and the next king that came after him, they took the name Caesar because they're a hemshech of him. Until today in Yiddish, how do you say a king in Yiddish? A Kaiser, that the Tsar was called a Kaiser. That was the name that became, because he was like a very chashuv king. So there's basically 3 stages in the rulership of Rome. There was first kings, then there was the Senate, and then there were the Caesars. Now when we say that Daniel sees these teeth, it's talking about the Senate, because the Senate, the way they were ruled, was not so much with power, with words, because they were kivyachol all scholars and wise people, and that's how they ruled their country. And the reason why we call it, the reason why these teeth were made out of iron or metal is because they were very strong. So even though they officially ruled with words, but they also were crushed whoever was against them. The pasuk continues describing this animal by saying, Achla umatka, it was eating and crushing up, u'sha'ara beragla rafsa. And whatever remained, it crushed with its legs. So this is what the Romans did, that they went and they destroyed many things. He says also, this interesting piece of history, we all know that Yehuda Maccabee fought against which country? The Greeks. What was the special power that the Greeks had in their armies? Elephants, right? So we know that he fought against the elephants. You know that Yehuda Maccabee's brother, Elazar, the famous story, Elazar killed an elephant and it fell on him and crushed him. So with Yehuda Maccabee, this is like a sad part of the story which you don't tell kids ever, because the kids have to walk away from Hanukkah. Yehuda Maccabee is the strongest and all that. But the sad reality is that Yehuda Maccabee, after the story of Hanukkah and the winning of the menorah, there were more battles, and Yehuda Maccabee ends up getting killed in battle. And the Yidden didn't have it like all dandy and rosy after. People think, Yehuda Maccabee killed Antiochus, and from there on, that's it. The Yidden are the superpower. It's far from the truth. The Yidden remained under the rulership of the Greeks that entire time. They were still in charge of them. The Yidden had somewhat of an autonomy, their own thing, but it wasn't as nice as you think. And Yehuda was killed, and the other brothers were killed. Who ends up overthrowing the Greeks and their powerful elephants? The Romans do. The Romans were the powerful ones that end up overthrowing the Greeks, and they're the ones that killed their elephants. It says it's a story that he came with 120 elephants against the Romans, and they they were able to kill. The Romans also had the system of governors, which means like this. When a country today in America, you have the president of the United States, and then the leader of every state is called a governor, and the leader of every city is called a mayor. So there's a mayor, governor, and a president. But the term governor was used then because Rome, they were conquering many, many countries, so they were in charge of the countries that they conquered. So a country that's nearby theirs, they can just expand and be part of it. But the countries that were further away, they conquered, but what are they going to do now? So they would have a governor, something that was called a pre-consul, I forget, they had different words for it, where the person was a representative of the Roman government, and he was in these places, and he would report back to the government. He would collect all the taxes and send back to the government. And he had people in Eretz Yisrael also, which then he didn't have to pay this governor. That's part of the reason that led to the second Beis HaMikdash, the Churban of the second Beis HaMikdash, because of the governor, what was going on over there at the time. What? No, that's the first Beis HaMikdash. That's in the first Beis HaMikdash. He wasn't the governor. He was a general of an army. Okay. The Pasuk then continues describing this animal by saying, "V'mishanya mikol chayvaso di kadama." It's different than all the animals before it. Rome was very different, as we said before. They were smarter, they were stronger, and also their kingdom lasted for so much longer. And then the Pasuk starts with a whole new description, which this leads us to the next Pasuk. The last words of Pasuk Zayin are, V'karnayin asar lo. It had 10 horns. 10 horns coming out of its head. So a pig, powerful, huge fangs, with 10 horns. Whoever saw a pig with horns before? So it has 10 horns. What do the 10 horns represent? So really, there's tons of opinions, like I said, and historians, the Mefarshim, know history, and they're showing you different bits of history, what this can mean. Some say it means that Rome itself had 10 sub-kingdoms under it. There's a list over here. Rome and Constantinople, Armenia, Hungary, Germany, Bulgaria, Israel or Palestine, France, Spain, Russia, and the places of Islam in Jerusalem, all part of the 10 that it had. Some say that there were 10 Caesars until the time of the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash. That's what the 10 refer to. And some say we're talking about when Mashiach comes, which many Mefarshim say these Pesukim connect to Mashiach, as we'll see in a couple of Pesukim, talks about Mashiach clearly. And it says when Mashiach comes, Rome will basically control 10 of the big kingdoms of the world, and that's what the 10 horns represent. Continues Daniel and says, Mistakel avis bekarnaya. So I'm watching this scary animal. It's very frightening. Again, the pig doesn't seem scary, but Daniel says it was awesome and scary looking with all these horns and these fangs and everything. And as I'm looking at these horns, Valu keren achri zeira. Suddenly I see from amongst the horns on its head, I assume it's on its head, a little small horn starts growing. And this little one grows beinehen. Uslos min karnaya kadmayasa is okra min kadama. And as it's growing, it knocks out 3 of the bigger horns that were there before. And then I'm looking at this horn and I see valu ainin ka'ainei anosha bekarnada. I see that on this horn there are 2 little eyes. Ufum memalol ravravan. And the mouth, it has a mouth and it's talking very loudly. So this little horn starts off little, becomes strong to knock out 3 of the bigger horns. It has these eyes, look like a human, and it has a mouth speaking very loudly. So who are we talking about over here? So again, many opinions in the Mefarshim. Some say this is talking to Titus. Titus was the last of the kings of the Romans, meaning the one that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. So he was small, and it says that he ended up destroying 3 kings, the Jewish kingdom at the time. He also was against the kings of the Ishmaelim, of those lands, of the Arab lands, even though Muhammad wasn't around, there was no Islam yet, but they were Arabs. I mean, by Avraham Avinu, they were already Arabs, but they weren't Muslims yet. And also the Greeks, he completely destroyed. That's what it means. And this that it says that he spoke chutzpahdik, because it's Yadua, it says in the Gemara what Titus did. That when he went into the Heichal, when he destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash, he brought a Zoyno with him, and he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He opened up a Sefer Torah as if it's a mattress, and he did an Aveda on the Sefer Torah in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Then he took a sword and he slashed the Paroiches, and Hashem performed a miracle that suddenly blood started spurting out of the Paroiches, and he thought, oh, I killed Chas v'Shalom Atzmai. And he started cursing and saying all these terrible things. And he says, look, Bichlal, when you fight somebody on the battlefield, if you win, it shows that you're a warrior. But if you go into the enemy's palace and kill him, that shows how strong you are. So he, in his mind, I came into the Beis Hamikdash, and this is what I did. So that's the word that he came and he said, and he was speaking, and there's this little, with his eyes and his mouth, this is what it's referring to. Then there are those that it says it's talking about the popes, and there's a whole arichas over here, because eventually the Romans, like we said, there was the Caesars, the Senate, and eventually it became ruled by the popes. And he brings the whole history how that worked. That Bichlal, just to point this out, the Romans originally were not Christians. The Romans originally were pagans. Pagans means worshipping idols. Christians in their minds do not worship idols. In Christians' mind, people that are pagan are Aveda. Now, the Romans originally persecuted the Christians. Some people are not aware of the history. There were Christians that had Mesiras Nefesh. They had Mesiras Nefesh and they actually died because they didn't want to worship Aveda Zarah and they wanted to remain the Christians. And the Romans persecuted them and they had to be in hiding all the time. And eventually what happens is that there's one of the Caesars. His name is Constantine. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He built the city Constantinople, and he actually became a Christian. So he was a Caesar, and when he became a Christian, and as he forced all of his people to become Christians as well, and from then on, the Romans turned into Christians. Now the Roman and Christians go together, the Roman Catholic Church, and that became the superpower, meaning the power of Rome was no more just the power of a kingdom that's powerful, but now it becomes a religious powerful. And the reason why it's compared to a small horn, because the small horn is the religious leaders. In most countries, the religious leaders don't have really much power. And that's the way it was originally by the Romans, because it was all the power of the kings and the Caesars. But once this Constantine gave the power to the Pope, they became bigger and bigger, and they basically decided to destroy everything else, and all the other kings. And he brings over here, like I said, there's so much history going on over here about who are the 3 countries that Constantinople got rid of, the 3 horns that he destroyed afterwards. Some say that it doesn't mean that he destroyed. It means the 3 branches that came out of Christianity. And some say that means that the Muslims, because Islam came later. Which one? So there's, Protestants, and then, I'm not familiar, there's Catholics, and then there's, right, so there was the 2 or 3 main ones that came out. I'm not sure which, he doesn't say names over, he just says there was a few, and he says Islam is also technically came out of that as well. And some say that we're talking about the Mashiach comes, that's when it's going to come, these 3 kings that are going to be destroyed. Akopanim, that's what part of what it says, and also points out that the reason why it had eyes of a human is to show that the Pope came with a whole different approach. Till then, everything was about power and control. From the Pope, that's when it began this concept of, I want you guys to worship just like I worship. In the previous kingdoms, there was a little bit of Avodah Zarah. Nebuchadnezzar tried forcing the Eden to do Avodah Zarah, Antiochus, but it wasn't such a religious zeal. We didn't suffer as much as we suffer by the religious problems, like the Crusades and the Inquisition. position, that's where the real problem. And they were like as if they're humans. They're looking at Hashem Kivyachol. They also believe in the Eibishter, and they look towards the Torah, meaning they rely on that. We know that the Christians, the reality is that there are many Christians that are very big Bekiim in Tanakh. They know Tanakh very well, and often better than the average Bacher. They know because they read Tanakh all the time. So they're looking, their eyes are looking Kivyachol in the right place, and they're using their words to try to convince and try to say things because that's how they went ahead and they did it. Like I said, there's many more interpretations over here. I just want to point out that even though I said that some say that this is not talking about the Romans, it's talking about the Ishmaelim, about the Arabs, and they also explain, according, if you want to say that it's the Muslims, what are the 10 countries, what's that little horn? That little horn would be Muhammad himself, or what would be the 3, that everything is explained. But those that say it's the Romans tell you, according to them, what's going on with the Muslims. The Muslims are a huge superpower. You can't ignore that. So they're going to say, this is what Ramban says. The Ramban says, yes, Muslims are a superpower, but we're only talking about the kingdoms that came as a hemshech to Yidden. The Yidden were the superpower in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, Shlomo HaMelech, and from there eventually that power transferred to Bavel, that power transferred to Madai and Paras, that power transferred to Yavam, and that transferred to Rome. Versus the Muslims, they became a superpower on their own. They didn't take it from anybody. They were in their countries, in the Arab countries, so that's not part of the same Seder Ishtalshalus. And that's why it's not mentioned over here in that. According to the Even Ezra, that says that this 4th animal is the Muslims, he says that the 3rd animal, the leopard, actually represents the Greeks and the Romans together and the Christians together. So it's Shivim Panim La Torah. Everything is true. But all this history you can find, especially the Abarbanel, has so much like sharing the history of what's going on in these times and showing how the Pesukim all refer to it. Huh? So the way the understanding is that the same superpower, it's all the hemshech of the Christian Roman Empire. That's the understanding, because today America is a superpower. The Pasha is a hemshech of the Roman, of the Christians, because America is Christian. That's how the Mefarshim interpret it. Most of the Mefarshim are way back in the times of the Middle Ages. So it was still within the Roman Empire, Kivyach. But so today, that's what I remember seeing. Today, that's how everyone interprets it. Okay, he continues now weiter, and the next pasuk, according to some, is the beginning of Mashiach, according to others not. The next pasuk is a famous pasuk in Chassidus, brought down all the time. Mitzvah Shem, we will do that next time.